Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Light Center's final webinar of 2024. This is really the very last session of 2024. So welcome and thank you for joining us today. Today, Dr. Alaina Desjardin will share simple yet powerful strategies to help your students become independent thinkers. We'll explore how to encourage deeper thinking, problem-solving skills, and the ability to learn independently, which are actually essential skills for success in and outside the higher education classrooms. Let's get started and finish the year with some inspiring ideas for your classroom. But before getting really started with this webinar, let's ensure that smooth and productive webinar experience for all participants. Please make sure to follow these guidelines. Please keep your microphone muted throughout the webinar. This will help maintain an organized and distraction-free environment. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat box and we will address them as much as we can, as many as we can. The webinar will be recorded for future reference and for those who cannot attend today's session. And the recorded webinar, along with the slides, will be distributed in the PD to Go newsletter next week. We will also share extra resources dealing with enhancing critical thinking skills in your students. So, Dr. Desjardins, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much for allowing me to present on such an important topic to close out the wonderful year here at Westcliff. A little bit about me. I've been at Westcliff for a few years now. I thoroughly enjoy my experience with such a progressive institution. I have spent a lot of my time in my classrooms, working with students all over the world. I am from New Jersey, so I am lucky enough to sit on online classes with my students and some hybrid as well. And through my time here, I've really embraced the community at Westcliff. This year, I'm lucky enough to serve as a fellows, and I am really working very diligently with my students to not only close out the year strong, but get the students in a great footing to drive them forward for 2025. Living in New Jersey, New York area, I've had experiences from very macro perspective, being part of companies and institutions that have really set the stage and wavelength for myself as an educator. And through that, I'm able to drive out conversations with my own students, share some meeting of the minds, some insight, and some case studies. And with that, I very much enjoy modeling and coaching and just supporting my students in a most holistic manner to be able to give them those transferable skill sets. So today, we're not going to only jump on these topics that I just spoke about, but also I'm going to showcase a couple of different things for you as well. So we have a packed hour with some really insightful information. Hopefully you leave here with a bit of tools for success that you're able to use back into the classroom or macro perspective. We'll have an icebreaker in a moment, and we are going to really dive into a platform called Padlet. If you heard of it before, please feel free to use the chat box with a thumbs up or some reactions. If you have not heard of it, maybe give me a thumbs down. Either way, we are going to showcase that in a moment. I use Padlet often with my students, and you will see during the presentation how useful it is. We're going to talk today about the power of critical thinking. And we're really going to hone into some of the foundationary components as we dabble into what is problem solving. What are some of the core elements that we think about with our students, and how we find our ways to foster independent thinking, but also use this as a hard and soft skill. We'll have another breakout session or the ability to dive into a particular platform, Padlet. But right after that, I'll show you another resource called Mural. I dropped in the chat box before, so you'll be able to see it in a moment. And then we'll loop back around to how we can apply this to practical applications in these real world settings. We'll end with future trends and some key takeaways, and then have an opportunity for a bit of a Q&A and see what else the Light Center has to offer in 2025. All right, so now it's your turn. So if you have a smartphone or a device, if you can grab it and scan the QR code. I also placed the link in the chat box, and I am going to give you a second to scan the QR code. Once you have that, I'm going to stop sharing this for a moment, and I'm going to showcase what Padlet is. And then I'm just going to let you all learn a little bit about each other while I continue to forward the presentation. All right, you got your QR code? All right, I'm going to stop sharing this. All right, in the chat box, you also have a link for individuals that prefer non-QR code. And there we go. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. And so I want to learn a little bit about you. But learning a little bit about you, we also have the ability to get to use Padlet. So this is the QR code if you want to take a second to scan again. All right. So I'm going to pull this down and pull this down over here. What you see here is Padlet. Padlet is a platform, interactive platform that we're able to utilize with our students. You can use a QR code to share out ideas. You can drop a link in the chat box for your students or within the gap structure. And then you have so many different opportunities to dive in to be able to get that collaborative effect for and with your students. Right now, I am demonstrating an icebreaker. This is an icebreaker, something similar to this that I do with my students all the time. I want to know about them. I want to be able to share some things about myself and to really set an opportunity to build that rapport with them early on in the term. And so one of my first classes with my students, I have an icebreaker similar to this, or maybe this, and it has a couple different things here. So you have our favorite things as a class, and song and place and food and book. And then you can add a section here if you are wanting to do that. Okay. And we're going to do it here together. Now, on the bottom right, it'll usually always house on the right-hand side of the screen. There would be a colored circle. Sometimes it's orange, yellow, purple. It's just a colored circle with a plus sign. Once you see that circle, you know that this platform has been activated. And so you can click this and let your students know that in order to post on the Padlet, you have to open the circle. It's going to give you a little box like this. The subject could be like myself, since I'll jump into here. Write something fantastic. So a favorite place that I like to travel to is New York City. This is just an example, okay? Now, I have an option of changing the color of the screen. I can make it yellow. I can make it purple, whatever my desire is at the time. And I have to publish it. So if I just stay like this, it will no longer sync or won't ever sync to the actual Padlet, the board. So once I publish it, it will link up to here. Okay. And then I can move it to the different places that I want to go to. Okay. So I want you, the team here, the audience, to play around with a Padlet and let us know what your favorite things are. You don't have to sit in all categories: song, a place, a food, or a book. We'll share a little bit about you. Okay. And so while this is being built, I'm going to move through the presentation. And so you can listen to me as I present and while you're working on something as well. Okay. So I'll stop sharing this for now. What I'm going to do is go back into the presentation. And I'm going to share my screen. So you're going to see it go in and out again. And so we are going to talk about some of the foundational techniques, or what the foundation is for critical thinking. A lot of times we start with an understanding of what critical thinking is and how we can provide opportunities for our students in the classroom to dive into critical thinking skills. Critical thinking is a process. It's a process that allows students to really hone in to their analytical skills, to use some synthesis skills, to forge into the notion of evaluating, all while diving into possibly complex scenarios, case studies, or really enriching material. For our classrooms and how we teach, we are teaching on different modes. Some of us are teaching online, traditionally online. Some are teaching hybrid, our faculty members, and some are in the building in Irvine teaching as well. But we know we have students all across the world, and that's the beauty of talking about topics of this nature of critical thinking and problem solving, because these topics can transcend and really layer over any modality by which we teach. So here we're talking about critical thinking, and we're going to hover over some of the concepts beyond this concern. So, critical thinking enhances a student or individual's problem solving skills. It has the ability to foster inquiry and reflection. And it also helps a student or individuals with their decision making skills. In a nutshell, critical thinking empowers informed decision making, not only in the schoolhouse, but in their professional life as well. And so we need these conversations when we think about critical thinking, because we're helping our students dive into the notion of effective reasoning. And so when we are built and with our students to go over the curriculum of the course, or just in a general shell, we provide our students an opportunity for these deep dives into not only analytical thinking, but the ability to problem solve. And so when we break down what critical thinking is, we know that it has some form of analysis. It could possibly add on the evaluation component to that. It leans into inference skills, explanation, and reflection. And so, for a moment, we look at critical thinking not only as a hard skill in our classroom, but also as a soft skill, because through those soft skills, we are enabling our students, or we're challenging our students with building up some skills that they will eventually need out there in the real world. So you leverage on the component of that experiential thinking, right? And so we find ourselves not only pushing out these problem solving techniques with integrating creativity, with creating a catalyst for logical reasoning, but we also provide innovative tools for our students that leans into this theoretical and practical practices, okay? So, some strategies to encourage analytical thinking in our classroom. Well, there's so many out there now. When I first became a teacher years ago, I taught fourth grade. And here in New Jersey, I went to teacher school and I was in classrooms, all different grade levels, fourth grade, second grade. And I learned many different strategies to teach, right? Fast forward now, teaching adults. Is it almost the same? Possibly. We're teaching students, right? But we also have to find ways to keep the conversations very engaging with our adult learners, because it's important to continue the prospect of building out the rapport, but also to keep the students engaged in the course material. It is difficult for sure. Students are possibly tired. They're had a long day at work and school and all different things, right? So the promotion of engagement takes some work on the professor's behalf to really dapple into the learning through inquiry. And what is that? It's basically brain based learning, right? We are fortifying question techniques that allow for open ended questions to take shape. So, no more yes or no, more a question that will pique somebody's interest and allow that person to dive and reflect and unpack that information in a way that stimulates dialogue. It may prompt the student to say, "Hey, I never thought of that. Let's think of it this way," right? We want that deep dive, brain based questioning. And it's important for students to have moments of time to be able to think and reason and reflect upon what's happening in the classroom so they're able to dive into that inquiry base. There's many different ways by which professors or educators can teach to their students. We have a very teacher structured or teacher led, and then you have student centered or learner centered classrooms. The learner centered classrooms hovers over the component of inquiry based learning. And so there's methods of discussion that take place in your classroom, and there's ways to be able to infuse bigger topics and bigger categories or buckets of information with your students in a way that offers continuous questioning, that encourages the students to be challenged, but it also lets them explore. And when we have these opportunities, we really have to use them as a catalyst to infuse futuristic conversations. So, Socratic method is one tool that we can use in our classroom to be able to push the questions to our students, to be able to captivate their interest, to be able to explore alternative answers to questions or case studies that you're working on. But what I really like is it encourages curiosity. And when a student is curious about a topic, they have interest. When a student has interest, they are motivated. And when they're motivated, they're inclined to stay present and involved in your classrooms. And that's really important. So, how do we foster curiosity in our classrooms? Well, we have to get a hook in, right? Students are coming into the classroom. What's getting them attentive to you? Is it an icebreaker? Is it an open ended question? How are they first meeting you in the classroom? Is it an entrance ticket to your gap class? What is happening at that moment? So start thinking about what type of tools or what type of prospects that you're doing in your classroom to get the students engaged early on. So we have our attendance naturally that we do, but what after that? Are students working on something independently? They're letting you know something that happened the prior week before, maybe a summary of what happened the week before. What is happening early on? And then from that moment, we have to be able to sustain the students in the classroom for the 3 hours or 1 hour, however long that they're with you at that moment. And so think, how are you sustaining your students for that period of time, right? So it's the marathon of working through the time that you're with them to not only dapple into the topic, the material, but also have their attention. That's important. So, finding ways to be able to strategize our students' analytical thinking is thoroughly important. And it stems a lot from how the educator formulates the early on conversations with the students in the classroom. And then from there, it transcends to many different areas of the classroom or that space that you're working with your student. So, a lot of times we think about what problem solving is. Problem solving has the ability to connect with real world applications. So, what do I mean by that? It's that experiential theory that we talk about, finding ways to students to leverage from in the classroom to outside in the real world. And yes, we're enabling our students to be strong subject matter experts of their field, of their topic. Maybe one day they will be on a panel with you. Maybe one day they'll have a business that you work at or shop at, right? These students are eventually going to go out there in the real world and they're going to use the tools that they build and they gain from Westcliff to be able to demonstrate their skill set out there in society. So it's important that we continue to not only foster critical thinking, but also to understand that problem solving skills is so vitally important. It enhances the ability for students to collectively think. It provides a catalyst that will leverage into diverse perspectives and the ability to cope in challenging environments. And that's why it's really important that we understand that problem solving has many different tools and positive conversations in the classroom that will enable our students to really get that hands-on experience, for them to encourage or apply their knowledge in practical settings, and also to provide an opportunity for these students to work through a collaborative mindset. As you heard, I spoke through this slide, I used a lot of Bloom's taxonomy words or verbiage, right? And so Bloom's is embedded into many of our conversations with our students, sometimes at a very high level, moderate level, wherever level you're tackling or you're dapping on Bloom's, ensure that we're using it to the most successful way possible in our classrooms. Collaborative mindset, that's important. Why? Because many of our students will go out there in a real world and have to work on teams, right? Maybe the teams are not sitting in front of you right now. Maybe they're scattered all over the world. And that's the beauty of Westcliff, because we have students that are all over the world. So collaborative mindset and working through these scenarios is vital to the student's success. So, how do we strengthen the minds of our students, and how do we find ways to impact them? And how do we really tap on the importance of critical thinking all while we're doing this? Well, there's many different ways to do this. A lot of times we use what we have, the textbook, the material, the curriculum, to drive out conversations in the classroom. But we also have to find the ways to make those textbooks, that curriculum, go from a one dimensional to a three dimensional. And by using the educator's ability to strategize the information, to scaffold the information that will eventually lead to better decision making for the students, or rational decision making based upon the ability to problem solve, that's where it's critical for that teacher to come in. So, finding ways to enhance the ability for the student to use transferable skill sets. What are transferable skill sets? Skills that they maybe use in their current workplace. Maybe the ability to talk amongst teams of individuals. Maybe to work across many different hierarchy levels. Maybe to break down complex problems, right? Or cope with the stressors of the day, right? So finding ways to be able to infuse those things into the classrooms. And so by doing this, we have to find useful resources like Padlet that's able to transcend the ability to not only foster critical thinking, but sustain the students. It's all about the notion of sustainability. Finding ways to connect the dots from the schoolhouse to the workforce and everywhere in between. Finding ways to connect the students through crosswalks. You have a schoolhouse, you have the workhouse, you have the home house. And what connects all of these students, right? Technology. In essence, it's technology. Yes, there are challenges that we overcome as educators, but recognizing that we have the strategies to overcome these obstacles is really important. Finding ways to tackle into the lack of engagement in the classroom and make it a positive by increasing new teaching methods from you, the educator in the classroom, will not only incite or invigorate your classroom, but also for yourself as the educator, motivate you to try new opportunities the next time you're in front of your students. Also, finding ways to infuse differentiated teaching instruction with your students is very critical. Finding interactive methods that not only promote critical thinking, but sustain the notion of problem solving throughout the course period. And really honing into resilience. The gritty students, the students that are over to sit through that marathon and not just that sprint, right? That are able to tackle challenges and see setbacks as an opportunity for a change agent. This is where critical thinking comes in, and the tools for success behind critical thinking comes from you, the educator. So we are going to do a brainstorming activity. If you can get your phones or your iPad or your Kindle out and scan this for me, please. As you're scanning this, I also have a live link in the chat box. I'm going to bring it over for you in a moment, but I want to give you a second to scan. All right, I'm going to stop the sharing. I'm going to go into the chat box and give you the link in case you need it. Here you go. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, okay? So we're going to do a little bit of an activity right now together. There's your QR code in case you need it again. All right, so here is Padlet from a different lens. Now, Padlet has so many different features, and after we go over this little activity, I will ensure that you all can see many different advantages of Padlet. Now, if you like, and I definitely think that would be useful, if you want to try out Padlet for yourself, in the bottom right-hand side, you have a green button. Do you click on it? It'll open up to this box that you see here, and then you can answer the question. And then once you're done answering the question, if you like to change the color, blue, green, whatever the case may be, you can, and then you publish it. Okay. So what are some strategies that you're currently doing in your classroom with your students that will foster or has fostered critical thinking? How can we use or create opportunities for our students that we are able to enable or flip the switch on of these innovative solutions for our students? Critical thinking, as you know, transcends across all classrooms. It's just the art of infusing this as a hard skill and also a soft skill that is ever so important. So feel free to work this brainstorming activity. And it would be great if you want to work on this, because then you can tell your students that you've actually used Padlet for yourself. And as you work on this, what I'm going to do is progress the PowerPoint slide out, and then we'll come back to review your answers at the end, okay? So stop sharing this. Let me go ahead and get back to that PowerPoint just for the essence of time. All right, here we go. And you should see the PowerPoint coming through. Oh, look. Let me try it one more time. There we go. Sharing. All right, so we went through the brainstorm activity, and now we are going to move forward a little bit and talk about some foundationary conversations of problem solving. So we spoke about the art of critical thinking. We discussed a little bit about what the notion of analytical thought is, and then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into problem solving. Know that problem solving offers the building blocks for effective solutions. Problem solving enables the ability to really work through obstacles with our students because they have the coping skills to be able to transcend. And so, some ways that we can foster the art of problem solving skills is to infuse case studies in our classrooms, or to infuse root cause analysis, or to infuse the ability to form frameworks and cycle through these frameworks by offering the students not only methodology, but also the ability to have that applied practical scenario. So you'll see in a moment, I'm going to share a different platform. The platform, I put the link in the chat box. If you're watching live, you can grab the link. It's Mural. And in a moment, I'm going to show you Mural, and it's going to actually show you some of the things that you can use on these platforms for and with your students. Effective solutions is where it's at. Getting us as an educator and our students to that goal of effective solutions is important. A lot of times we work our way backwards, right? We use the UDL approach, universal design, and we work our way backwards. In these platforms where we're using gamification, gamification actually promotes or really sits in that spot of UDL, because we know as educators what we want the output to be, right? And it's working through those outputs that we're able to see that real world application. So the notion of real world applications comes from the lens of connectivity. Years ago, I sat in a spot of having the ability to um, connect different solutions together. And so I had to find ways to bridge the gaps between the schoolhouse and the home house, right? And so how did I do this? Well, there was different ways to be able to leverage the teams, but finding ways that had that application that was real world was technology, right? Finding programs and platforms that were able to sync the worlds together is really important, and it really hovers over the notion of collaboration. As you know, it is a soft and a hard skill. So teamwork has an opportunity to not only offer the ability for students to see the complexity within the solution output, but also to see the meeting of the minds, being able to discuss in-depth conversations with their student or their classmates and you, and to bring in that diversified perspective. That's really critical, especially working on programs or working through case studies where we have project based initiatives, we have hands on experiences that students can immerse themselves in to build out that output of critical thinking and practicality skills, but also that hard theoretical notion that we're trying to infuse or embed into the coursework. Shift happens when we're able to connect the dots for our students and be able to incite them and motivate them and use these opportunities as a catalyst to foster change or a change agent for the students to say, hey, this is my end goal. This is my UDL, right? So, how do I get to where we need to go? That's the question. Case studies, really critical. They're not only effective, but really, really a great way to be able to demonstrate various initiatives that take place in the discipline area that you're here under. Case studies not only infuse an opportunity for students to start thinking in the mindset of that particular subject matter expert, right? But also to immerse themselves into an opportunity to see things through a different lens. And that's important. When we're using examples from the field inside of our classmates have the ability to talk. They can collaborate. They can build rapport amongst each other and also network amongst each other as well. That's important because that's a skill bank, a soft skill. It's important to understand the impact of student learning through understanding that there are many, many, many benefits in the engagement of our students amongst each other. And so, through the infusement of critical thinking and through the infusement of implementing successful strategies in the field, we're able to really hover into this practical component. We have practicality and we have applied and we have all these things that are happening. And these strategies in education provide a futuristic opportunity for success. Emerging trends in gamification really enables us to be adaptable. Why do we need to be adaptable? We always have to be able to see ourselves through the methodology by which we're teaching our students, but also we want to see yourself in the futuristic component as well. Our students will be the product of you out there in the school and really sit as subject matter experts soon. And so, through the integration of technology, through the ability to be dynamic in the teaching, through the ability to foster critical analysis for our students, we are not only building strong subject matter experts, we are building lifelong learners. And that is the key component, the glue that holds us all together. We are promoting our students with the lens of long term marathon thinking, not the sprint. We are promoting our students with the ability to dive deep in the formal education, but know that they have a long period to go to infuse what they've learned at Westcliff in a bigger, more macro perspective, setting them up for long term success, the marathon. As you see on the screen here, there are some active learning techniques, and we talked about these a little bit. Case studies for sure is right in the middle of this screen. On the left-hand side, you see simplistic, simple. Right-hand side, you see the complex. We want to be able to hover in this conversation with students and lean more to that middle to complexity. Active learning is where it's at. Active learning allows for that student centric component to take shape, less of the teacher driven and more of the student centric, the Socratic method, the ability to infuse interactive lessons that dapples on technology, that hovers in the ability of that hard and soft skill, and gets the student immersed in the topic. We want those hands-on learning experiences. We want the students to have the ability to talk and have a meeting of the minds amongst themselves. We know that our students are all across the world. We know that our students have a diversified platform by which they can teach and talk and sit with, right? And so these are our things that we know. What we want is our students to be lifelong learners. And how do we do this? Exposure to different learning techniques, active learning techniques. So on the right hand side, you see experiential learning. That's that experiential theory I was talking about. Site visits. You may say, I can never take my students to an actual business place because I teach them online. Well, we can sit anywhere we want to sit because we have the ability of the internet, right? And take them on a learning experience, an immersed learning experience of a stimulated business sector, right? Provide them an opportunity to get that deep dive inquiry based learning to take place. Have them work through case studies and do some role playing and skit work together because eventually they're going to be out there in the real world having to have these skills. I'm going to provide some key takeaways now and then jump into the next review of Mural. Key takeaways are really critical, and some of them are really important to understand that we are in this really, really strong sitting position as an educator to encourage our students to be active members in our classroom, but also to be members of the community as well. And through the members of the community, the students are not only immersed in different areas, right? But they also see that long term goal of a potential job or a career or a future schooling that they want to sit in. So it not only encourages their students to be here in the now, in the moment, but it also provides them opportunities for that deep dive successful sessions that has a component in the field of practicality. So it's important to embed daily routines in our students and through the infusement of your teaching practices, we not only have the ability to inspire our students, but also have the ability to be a catalyst for change for our students. So I'm going to stop sharing this for a moment and I'm going to head to a spot. And I placed it in the chat box before. It's Mural. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And this is another fantastic platform. I've used it actually this past week with my students. They have loved the ability to share some insights and some ideas. And you set yourself up here with Mural, and there are so many different resources here for you right at your fingertips. Mural is interactive. Mural provides not only a platform for students to be able to use, but also the ability for them to get that tech skills in. Okay, so there are templates on there on your screen that you'll see. One template is this. So this is the chart that we were just talking about. You have strengths and weaknesses and opportunities on the bottom, and then you have threats. And so this is a quadrant. Now, you don't have to leave it like this. This is just one example. You can actually change anything here. But just for time being, if students want to, you have a group of 20, and each student takes, a strength or a weakness or each group. On the left-hand side, you have some sticky notes. Students click the sticky notes and it sits in a spot, and then they'll answer the questions. And then it'll basically build out, much like your boards are going to build out when I share my screen in a second. And so what does this do? One, it fosters collaboration. Two, it allows the students to continue to be forward thinking, and you as well. But three, as you know, the students in our classroom, they're all learning differently sitting in the same classroom. We may have some students that are very strong visual learners. We may have students that are very strong in auditory and kinesthetic, or a mixture of different combinations, right? So we have to find ways to differentiate our teaching style that supports the population of students in our classroom. That's a big task. How do you do this? Well, gamification, like Mural, is one way to be able to support students that are coming from a variety of different learning styles, right? But it's not only learning styles. We have students that are sitting in a classroom that have different social styles, right? And so, again, you ask yourself, well, how am I going to fill that void or fill that expectation? Well, platforms like this that dabble in for students to collaborate, but then the students can pull back and work on independent tasks on these platforms. So Mural is one example of this. I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to go back to the brainstorming activity that you were tasked with before. I'm actually going to share two things here. We're going to go into our favorite things first and just scan the room a little bit. And so you can see how it's built up. When I do this with my students, they post recipes and they're just like all over the place. I learned so much from my students about how to cook and what books to buy. And it's just places to visit, right? So here we go. Here's some real nice songs here that our group here added in. And then some students put some places to go, Los Angeles and Netherlands, and all these different nice things. And once you have a large group of students, this board fills up so nicely, and it's really a great opportunity to take a moment to learn about your students, because it's not only about, the academic, that hard skills. It's about building the relationship that will transcend across these platforms. Let me share this with you here. Now, this is our other brainstorming activity, if you can see this. This talks about the ability for students or educators to see things from a different light. So, Elizabeth, you just added in here, and I'll just jump on this for a moment. Ask students to prompt AI to provide feedback on assignments based upon requirements. Yes, very, very, very true. I definitely agree with that. And you'll see how some of these have these words in here. So this is fearless flamingo, and this is excited rhino and determined butterfly. And you may say, well, why is this? I didn't put this name on here. Well, this is what Padlet sets up. They use animals, sometimes vegetables, I've seen some fruits, right? And they make a name and they pop it in there. It's basically generated, right? They pop it in there. And so when you call out, excited rhino, the students are looking around, but it creates some happiness moments too, because they're smiling at some of the names that are on here. So, we have Fearless Flamingo saying, ask for groups to own a role in the case study. Yes. So in essence, you're creating a charter possibly, right? And we're able to, transcend that conversation as a change agent. Very good. Excited Rhino. But asking open questions, right? That open conversation. We do not want closed questioning. Providing case studies. Give my students time to reflect, right? That's really important as well. Determined Butterfly puts real case scenario applications. Yes. And Zed ask them to think about their why. Absolutely. What is their why in this process? And what is the glue that holds us all together? Let me head back to the PowerPoint real quick, okay? So as we know, we've talked about a whole bunch of different things since we've been here over the past time. And I'm going to share a screen, and then we'll talk a little bit more about some Q&A. So, when we think about this integration of technology, we are in this crossroads of supporting our students for the now, right? But we're also in the crossroads of supporting our students for the future. And we do this through the integration of digital tools that will enhance our students' overall well-being in the classroom, but also find a way to be able to approach the scenario through the lens of a critical thinker, through the lens of a problem solver, but also through the lens of diversity within these students. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk through these topics here. I'm going to put this back in Light Center, and thank you again.